Hello there, everyone. Welcome to our post-fight coverage of UFC 258. I'm Ariel Helwani. That's Marc Raimondi. 258 just wrapped up in Las Vegas at the UFC Apex. And in the end, Kamaru Usman is still the UFC welterweight champion. He defeats Gilbert Burns in the third round via TKO. What a great fight. Gilbert Burns rocked him in the first round. He weathered that storm, came back in the second to win that round, got some big shots in, and then finished Gilbert Burns, his former teammate, in the third. So he retains his UFC welterweight championship. There's a lot to talk about as it pertains to the fight. There's a lot to talk about as it pertains to his future. Also of note on this card, Alexa Grasso with a very impressive win over Maycee Barber. Kelvin Gastelum snapping his 3-fight losing streak. We'll talk about all that and more right here on the post-fight wrap-up. Marc, let's start, of course, with the main event. Biggest takeaway from what Kamaru Usman did tonight against Gilbert Burns?
Well, I mean, Usman is the real deal. I mean, that's not a takeaway that just came from tonight, but Gilbert Burns was a very tough matchup for him, and there was some adversity early on. Burns put Usman, I thought, in big trouble in that first round. Usman weathered the storm, stayed disciplined, and came back and finished the fight in the third round. And I thought Usman's striking in this fight was better than I've ever seen it before. And he kind of went toe-to-toe with Colby Covington in a back-and-forth fight that was very 50-50 in the striking. And it looked like Burns would get the better of Usman in this fight in the first round. But as the fight wore on, second round, Usman looked great. He was switching stances. His jab, I've never seen Usman's jab look this good. I'm not sure if that's the influence of Trevor Whitman. Of course, Henry Hooft is also an excellent striking coach as well. But I thought Usman looked incredibly sharp on the feet. And that's not really what he's known for. He's known for his wrestling. He's known for, grinding against the cage. He beat Woodley that way. He beat Masvidal that way. But I thought his striking looked better than ever tonight. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway that I had.
Yeah, I said before the fight that I believed Gilbert's best path to victory was to engage in the center of the cage, strike, exchange leather. I thought he was the quicker striker. He had more power in his hands. And for the first round, it looked like that was going in his favor, and it was the perfect way for the fight to play out for him. And I don't know if we've ever seen Kamaru Usman in that kind of a dangerous spot. Like, he was really rocked in the first round, but credit to him, he was able to turn things around and look great in the second round. And then I thought the stoppage was obviously the right one. And of course, he finished Gilbert Burns in the third. This is something that I think Gilbert Burns will have to chew on for quite some time. You could see how emotional he was afterwards. I think he probably thinks he had the champ in the first round and maybe got a little too excited in that first round. But I feel like overall, I mean, he represented himself quite well. In the end, though, as you mentioned, Usman's striking, his fight IQ, his evolution as a champion and a fighter was just too much for Gilbert Burns, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I agree with all those things. I mean, going to the fight, I was shocked at what the line was, what the odds were. That Usman was almost a 3-1 favorite. I couldn't believe how much lack of respect that was being given to Gilbert Burns in this fight, because Burns has looked fantastic at 170. He's looked really great since moving up. And to me, I think he proved that he belonged there very much. I think if they do have a rematch down the road, I don't think the line will be that long, because again, he put Usman in trouble more than anyone else really has as far as on the feet. And Usman didn't really want to part of Burns on the ground either. There were opportunities where Usman could have gone to the ground with Burns. He didn't really want to go into Burns' guard. And I think that's probably from the experience they have as training partners together, where, Burns is a multiple-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. You don't want to really be on the ground with that guy. And as you said, maybe you don't want to be on the feet with that guy either. But Usman really looked incredibly sharp with his striking. And I got to mention the jab again. The jab is one of the best jabs I've seen, in an MMA fight recently. I thought that really looked good, and it hasn't been something that he's used as much as he did tonight, I thought.
Dropped him with a jab before he finished him.
Yeah.
Very impressive stuff. Gilbert Burns fails in his attempt to make history in his own right, because he was trying to become the first Brazilian welterweight champion in UFC history. Now the Brazilians are 0-5 in male welterweight title fights. And so that's the only division left. It's a pretty amazing thing as far as the male divisions are concerned. That's the only division left. I say male welterweight champion. There is no female welterweight champion, but maybe one day we'll go from 155 to 170. There isn't even a 155 division. What the hell am I talking about? You get the point. But Kamaru Usman made his own kind of history, right? Kamaru Usman breaks GSP's record for consecutive wins at welterweight. He now has 13. GSP's record was 12. And also, he ties Khabib Nurmagomedov's record for the second fastest start in UFC history, 13 straight wins. The record is Anderson Silva. That's the only guy above him at this point. It's a remarkable run. It's a remarkable start, if you want to call it that, to his career. Afterwards, he was talking about put some respect on my name. He's like, he's angry. He's mad. He's got a chip on his shoulder. I feel like everyone's kind of respecting him. Like, do you feel like he's not getting the respect that he deserves at this point? And if he wasn't, I mean, I can't imagine anyone not giving him that respect after this performance.
I do see where he's coming from, Ariel. I really do, because when you break down that number that you just said, that consecutive wins, now Usman's at number 13. The only person that has ever won more fights in a row in UFC history was Anderson Silva, who has 16. Now Usman is in company with others. There are 7 people tied at 13. But think about that for a second. Only one man in UFC history has ever won more in a row than Kamaru Usman has, and that's Anderson Silva. That's a pretty big feat. And I think that people don't talk about this enough. And I do think that to an extent, he is not given that type of all-time credit. And I don't think he's even all the way there yet. Obviously, there's still much to do. He only has 3 title defenses compared to like a GSP who had 9, but 13 wins in a row in a very good division. Look at the guys that he's beaten. He's already beaten a lot of the contenders who were already there. We're talking about rematches for Usman now against Masvidal or Covington. Of course, Leon Edwards still needs his shot, but I'm incredibly impressed by what he has done, and I don't think that he gets the credit he deserves as far as the pound for pound rankings. Because when you think of the pound for pound, he's not one of the first guys you think of, right? You think
No,
of Khabib Nurmagomedov first, of course, but you don't really put Usman in that category.
sure.
John Jones, even Henry Cejudo was I believe above Usman before
Israel
he
Adesanya.
retired. Adesanya.
Yeah.
Usman arguably has done more. Maybe he hasn't finished guys the way Adesanya has, but surely 13 wins in a row in the UFC is no joke in that division. It's like an incredible division.
I agree with everything you just said. He should get more respect in that regard. I think his maybe not so fan friendly style as of late maybe turned some fans off. The Masvidal fight was a bit of a letdown. I did not criticize him at all for that fight. I thought he fought the right kind of fight, had the right kind of game plan. People forgot just how much fun his Colby Covington fight was, but for some reason, because he's not as flashy as an Izzy, or maybe as dominant or goes for the kill like a Khabib, or a Stipe heavyweight, like he doesn't get that attention. John Jones, of course, he should be discussed in that group of fighters. I am not ready though to talk about him as the greatest welterweight champion of all time. Like, I see that starting to become a thing, as you mentioned, still a ways away from GSP's record of most, welterweight title defenses. He's in the conversation, in my opinion, with the likes of Matt Hughes and Pat Miletich. I think that's totally fair, but definitely not GSP. Do you agree?
Completely agree. He's not there yet. I mean, GSP had 9 straight title defenses. That's a pretty impressive mark, and Usman is now at
And 11 total, I do believe.
11 total, and Usman is at 4 straight.
4.
So there is a road to go for Usman, and maybe he gets there, maybe he doesn't. That's a long time. The one thing that I will say about that is that Usman did have to win a lot of fights to even get to the title. So you can't completely blame him for the UFC's matchmaking and not giving him a title shot sooner, where I thought he actually deserved one sooner than he got one. So I do have to give him a little bit of a mulligan there. You can't base everything on title defenses, because a lot of that is based on what, when in your career the UFC gives you one of those shots. So it's a tough one to compare, apples to apples, but I don't think he's in GSP's class just yet. Could he get there? I think he could. I think he's young enough, and I do put him right there with the Hugheses and the Miletiches and the Woodleys and the Lawlers and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and he doesn't take a ton of damage. I know he got rocked today, but historically he doesn't. One last thing on this fight. I spoke to Henry Hooft, who was a big character in this story, the coach at Sanford MMA, who coached Kamaru Usman for about 8 years, and the same with Gilbert Burns, but he decided to sit this one out, didn't even watch the fight. He told me he was just staying home in South Florida. He told me that he feels like Usman will come back. I don't get that impression. I feel like he's very happy in Colorado. He's happy with Trevor Whitman. He's happy training with Justin Gaethje. And I feel like enough happened leading up to this fight that we don't see Kamaru Usman, at least right now in the near future, go back to South Florida, go back to Sanford MMA. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I'm not sure he does. The one thing, of course, that will keep him close to that gym is geography. His daughter, of course, lives in Florida, and I don't think he wants to be away from his daughter for too long of a stretch. So I could see him coming into the gym the way he did a few months ago when he helped out Sean Soriano for his training camp and back in September. Usman was actually at Sanford MMA back then, and he helped some fighters that he knows and some friends of his there at that gym. So he wasn't really training for his own training camp there, but he was still in the gym as a presence because he still has a lot of good friends there. I mean, he was one of the captains of the gym when the wrestling coaches were away coaching and cornering fighters. He was coaching wrestling class at that gym. Same thing with Gilbert Burns in jiu-jitsu class. They were almost co-captains of that team. So
Mm.
I don't see him maybe making that full break, but I'm not sure if he goes back to that gym fully either. One last thing on that, it really and I think this is a misconception that a lot of people have is that he didn't just leave Sanford MMA because Gilbert Burns was getting the title shot. I spoke at length with Usman's mentor Rashad Evans and Usman's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach George Santiago, who was his Jiu-Jitsu coach going back to the Black Zillions days. One of the reasons why he left, and maybe the most important reason, was because he felt he needed more personalized attention. Black
Mm.
Zillions had, I think they had like 17 UFC fighters. There's a lot of guys and girls at that gym that take up a lot of time for the coaches, and he wanted more of a personalized atmosphere, and that was one of the reasons why he went to Trevor Whitman. And by the way, Rashad Evans, his mentor, the first place he went when he left Greg Jackson's was Trevor Whitman. So it all kind of comes full circle for those two.
Yeah, and then he went to South Florida, and that's where they all met. I mean, it's a crazy thing how it all trickled down from Rashad leaving Albuquerque prior to the John Jones fight. Another thing that Kamaru Usman now has in common with GSP, as you alluded to, he's starting to run out of fresh opponents,
Mm.
right? I mean, he has wins now over Leon Edwards, albeit that was a long time ago, but he still has that win. Win over Jorge Masvidal, win over Colby Covington, now win over Gilbert Burns. I mean, those are the top guys at 170. You'd have to go down to, I think, number 5 in Wonderboy Thompson to find a fresh opponent. He's not
Yeah.
really on his radar right now. Case in number 6. And so I was wondering what he would say after the fight. And what did he say? He called out Masvidal. I mean, he was very. It's rare to see a champion who has a win over a guy call out that guy as directly as he did. But he said, hey, you used the excuse of the 7-day notice. Let's do it full camp. And now here's the whole backstory to all of this. Let me inform the viewers. So the UFC is looking for coaches for The Ultimate Fighter. They're about to start filming. The Ultimate Fighter is coming to ESPN Plus. They want some big names. Their plan as of now, I mean, there was a time where the plan was Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov, but that plan died, as we all know. The plan as of just a couple of days ago was Jorge Masvidal versus Colby Covington as coaches, and then they would fight at the end of the season. It makes all the sense in the world. They've got their history, they've got their beef and whatnot. Masvidal wasn't too keen on being a coach opposite Colby Covington for all those weeks, giving him the shine, giving him the rub, said, I'd do the fight, but I'm not doing the Ultimate Fighter. Now here comes, and so they didn't get a deal done. And that's why yesterday, Friday, you see Dana White saying, hey, maybe we'll do Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington after that Chimaev news came out that he was pulling out of the fight on March 13th. That was more of a negotiation ploy trying to get Masvidal to bite. Well, of course, 24 hours later, here's Kamaru Usman coming on camera and saying, I won Jorge Masvidal. Moments later, there's Jorge Masvidal's co-manager, Malkikawa, going on Twitter and saying, well, let's do Usman and Masvidal as coaches on The Ultimate Fighter. That makes a lot of sense. I do believe that Usman's manager, Ali Abdelaziz, telling our own Brett Okamoto that he's interested in that as well. And so now all of a sudden, you've got the coaches on tough, check. You've got a potential title fight for Usman, check, a big-time rematch. Are you down with this whole idea? What do you make of it all?
Yeah, I actually am. I actually like that idea. And there are some options for Usman, of course, at 170. I still think that Leon Edwards at some point needs a damn title shot. I don't know what they're going to do. I guess it's going to be Colby Covington now filling in for Chimaev. That fight just, I don't know why they didn't move on from that fight before, but they didn't. So now Chimaev is out again. Hope he's okay with COVID. But, poor Leon Edwards still has, no opponent again. It's crazy. But as far as Usman versus Masvidal goes, I do like that. And, I think a lot of people point back to the fight last July where Masvidal came in on 6 days notice. Of course, that was supposed to be Burns in that spot, and Burns tested
Mm.
positive for COVID-19. And Masvidal swooped in, and it was a quick negotiation, and he got the fight. And it was a one-sided fight, but look at that first round. Masvidal is a very dangerous guy, and he was dangerous in that first round. And I think when he has a full camp, it is a much more competitive fight. I don't think I think many people would agree with that, right? I mean, I think that if Masvidal is on a full camp, that's a much better fight than it was the first time
Sure.
around. And maybe even Usman performs a little bit better, because I think even he would admit that he didn't have a great fight against Masvidal, even though he won the first time. I'm into that idea. I really am. And I think even going back before they fought, there was a build to that fight, right? They had that encounter at the Super Bowl
Yep.
media day, to I guess it was over a year ago now, that was supposed to lead into that fight in earnest. It didn't end up happening in earnest. It ended up being, Burns and Masvidal kind of filling in, but there's a build, there's a history there. I like the idea, but there are other guys in that division too. Colby Covington and Usman. Maybe Colby needs one more win, but he's coming off a good win. He fought Usman very competitively. There's no lack of options, but it just seems to be the same guys that have
Right.
already been in front of Usman. And I think Gilbert Burns down the road, if he wins one or two more, he could be back in that conversation too. So it'll be really interesting to see how the division shakes out. Wonder Boy needs an opponent. Michael Chiesta's up there coming up. It's a tremendous division.
Yeah. The one thing I don't like about it is I really want to see Masvidal versus Covington. I really want
Right.
to see that fight.
I
And
don't
so
want
if
to see
you,
that on Tough though. I don't want to see that on the Ultimate Fighter. I don't want to see that, because
yeah,
that's a very real. That is a very real tension between those two guys, a very real thing.
I
And I
feel like
think that
Masvidal and Usman have real tension too.
no, 100% they do, but it's more of a sporting tension. It's
Sure.
more of
Yeah.
it's more of, this guy's the welterweight champion. I
Yeah.
want his belt. I want to take it. I don't like that guy. The Usman, the Covington Masvidal thing is a different level, and those guys are roommates, and there's a lot of history there. It's deep seated, and I'm not sure if you know a reality show is really what is the best idea for that level of personal dislike.
Sure. I mean, I can't even believe we're talking about tough coaches in 2021. I
Yeah.
can't, like, this feels like deja vu all over again. I guess the one thing that I do like about Usman Masvidal as tough coaches is Usman just fought. So historically, what I didn't like about the tough coaches gimmick was it would shelve two guys
Yeah.
who were on a roll, momentum. We wanted to see them fight right away. Well, Usman's not fighting anytime soon. And yes, we'd love to see Masvidal fight, but at least now it buys us some time. Perhaps you do the fight, I don't know, in July or something like that, whenever it wraps up. And maybe that makes a little more sense. And then
Mhm.
Covington Edwards makes a lot of sense. It's nowhere near done. It was just thrown out yesterday. I mean, there are
Yep.
no talks of it, but that would make sense. Leon deserves a big fight. So there's a lot of permutations. I don't even know if there's a better option than any of this. Like, I can't really think of one.
Yeah.
Maybe Nathan Diaz. No, I'm just joking. Everyone calm down. But it does feel like, hey, if wants it, if Usman wants it, they need coaches on tough. Like, this one kind of feels like the one that's going to be made because there are no roadblocks here.
Yep. And I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm very good with another Usman Masvidal fight. I have no problem with that, and I think it would be good for both guys to get that one, to run that one back.
Yeah. All right. So that's the story as far as the main event is concerned. Let's give the co-main event some shine as well. Bigger story coming out of the co-main event. It was won by Alexa Grasso. She's now 2-0 since moving up to 125. First time she wins 2 straight fights since 2016. She was 4-3 in the UFC going into this fight. Now 5-3. She defeats Maycee Barber in her much anticipated return. Now that's 2 in a row as far as losses are concerned for Maycee Barber. What's the bigger story? How Grosso looked and how she has now looked in 2 straight fights at 125, or Maycee Barber, who at one point was talking about being the youngest champion in UFC history, now suffering her second straight defeat?
That's a good question. I want to say that it's a little bit of both, and what I mean by that is I
Yeah,
think
you're
that.
sitting on the fence now, a little bit of both. What are you
Well,
talking about?
hear me out for a second. Hear me
Okay.
out for a second, Ariel. Here's how I feel about this fight. I feel like Alexa Grasso at one point in time was in a very similar spot to Maycee Barber. It was about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, actually, now that we're in 2021, where there was an Invicta FC show. You mentioned it on the weigh-in show on Friday morning, and Dana White was at this Invicta show, and Alexa Grasso had this amazing fight against Mizuki Inoue. And Dana White was already gushing. This is 2015, gushing about Alexa Grasso as this next big prospect in the women's division, possibly the next big Mexican star for the UFC. She never quite turned prospect into superstar.
Mm,
And that's okay, because she's 27 years old now. She's still in her athletic prime, and now she's winning fights. She's finally put together a little bit of a win streak. She's in a division that fits her better now at 125 pounds, and she's doing really well. And she beat Maycee Barber tonight. I think that Maycee Barber, as someone who's only 22 years old, I think that the reality is, and it probably was this even before she lost to Alexa Grasso tonight, is that she just wasn't simply ready for that to be coronated, right, as the next big star in any UFC women's division. And quite frankly, she wanted to be the youngest champion, but that road goes through a woman by the name of Valentina Shevchenko, and she was not ready for that fight. All respect to Maycee Barber, I think that she's a phenomenal talent. I still do, but she was not ready for Valentina Shevchenko at 22 years old. Now, I think that she will get there eventually, and she will be there because she showed a lot of promise in this fight. She came back in the third round. She needed a finish, and she went for it. And she gave Grosso issues in that third round. But right now, I think that you look at Grosso and you say she never really went from prospect to superstar, but she's still here. She's still now a contender in the women's flyweight division, and it'll be interesting to see how she gets matched up moving forward. And that division is, if you win a couple in that division in a row, you can get a pretty high ranking, right? Because there isn't a very crowded division at the top. So there is
Right.
room for Grasso there. And then Maycee Barber, maybe her future's at 115. She fought at 115 in the UFC before. Is her camp going to be, remaining with Mike Valley and Izzy Martinez in Chicago? Will she go back to, Rufus and Ben Askren in Wisconsin? I think these are all questions that she needs to figure out. But at 22 years old, there's nothing for her to be ashamed about. Okay, she isn't going to be the youngest champion in UFC history. That's fine. She may still be a champion down the road.
Right. I'm happy you brought up the camp because I do feel like she's bounced around a lot. So, I'd like to see her find some
Hmm.
consistency there. If you are writing off Maycee Barber, if you are trying to dance on her grave that you have created for her, you're being completely foolish. I mean, look no further than Alexa Grasso. You can stumble and
Exactly.
then turn things around. She's just 22, as you said. She has plenty of time left in this sport. She's got the base, she's got the skill set, not worried about her whatsoever. Of course, if she wants to keep on going. And to me, Grasso, her evolution and how good she looks at 125. And what about, I believe it was towards the end of the second round, that transition where she was taken down and then all of a sudden is able to reverse things. I think she went for a triangle, then she went
Mhm.
for an arm triangle. I mean, it was amazing. Alexa Grasso, the striker, the Mexican boxer, doing all this stuff on the ground against like Maycee Barber, that was impressive stuff. Now, I'm not pushing her into a title fight anytime soon, but she is a player at 125. She was ranked 15th going into this fight. She is not the 15th best fighter at 125. No doubt about that. A Joanne Calderwood type of fight next, perhaps, would make a lot of sense to me, but I'm very excited about where she's at right now. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, Cynthia Calvillo, Jennifer Maia
Sure.
just came off that loss to Valentina
Yeah.
Shevchenko. Anyone in that mix, seems to make sense. Caitlin Chikagian is there, and then I guess Andrade and Lauren Murphy are vying for the title. But yeah, I think she's not at the front of that mix, but she's definitely in that mix a little bit now.
Kelvin Gastelum snaps his 3-fight losing streak. He busts out the wrestling boots, not actual wrestling boots, but he did a lot of wrestling, more takedowns than he's ever had before in a fight, double his previous high. I think he had 6 takedowns. His previous high was 3 against Uriah Hall back in his UFC debut. Tough finale. Big win for him over Ian Heinisch. Ricky Simone with a nice win over Brian Kelleher. Chael Sonnen continues to talk about him as a future stud. Well, it looks like it's starting to come together. Julian Marquez walking out to Miley Cyrus, calling out. Can I just say something about Julian Marquez? It was fun, but I feel like he wasted it. Like that's we walked away with like a promo about Kansas City and Miley Cyrus. Like I feel like he wasted the promo. He had the energy, he had the delivery. I feel like the end result wasn't quite what he wanted it to be. Anyway, Anthony Hernandez with the shocking win over Rodolfo Vieira. Tell us, what do you want to talk about as we say goodbye here?
Well, you mentioned everybody that I was going to talk about already,
No, you
Ariel.
could have talked
So
about Polyana Viana. I mean, I heard she took down a mugger. I don't know if you heard this
yeah,
news.
I
Breaking
can't believe
news.
that. I can't believe I missed that story from 2 years ago that happened. But no, Fluffy Hernandez. I mean, he he submitted a multiple time
Crazy.
Brazilian Jiu Jitsu world champion Rodolfo Vieira, ADCC champion, one of the best grapplers, pure grapplers to ever really make the transition into MMA. The guy was a dominant, Jiu Jitsu competitor for so many years. And Fluffy Hernandez, who kind of a journeyman guy. He's got
Yeah.
the potential. He's still in his 20s, but he chokes him out, plus 1600 in the odds for that submission. Incredible. And then Julian Marquez, after 31 months away, he's been trying to get back, has a big win, cuts kind of an off the wall promo, wants to go on a date with Miley Cyrus. I don't know, but I'm happy to see him back. He's an exciting guy. He's fun to watch. That was a really entertaining fight with Coconut Bombs, Maki Pitolo. it was a pretty fun card. I know that it wasn't a heralded super
Right.
deep card for the UFC, but I enjoyed watching almost every fight.
Yeah, the Anthony Hernandez submission that will go down, I think, in December as one of the upsets of the year. Not just for the win itself, but the way in which
Yes.
he defeated Rodolfo Vieira, who, in case you don't know, is like one of the most decorated, as you said, BJJ guys in the sport today. Can I just highlight one last thing before we go? Since you're the rules guy, the
I
commission
don't
guy,
know. It's getting
one
a little
last
late. I don't know.
one last thing. What about Phil Rowe getting, hit below the belt twice and no point taken
Yeah.
away, like no repercussions for this whatsoever? That's not right, right?
So I mean, the whole thing with referees and points. Here's the spiel, right? Referees are very hesitant to give out to take away points because it affects the fight so much. A 10-8 round can really swing. It could be the difference between a win and a loss, a win and a draw, a loss and a draw. It's a major impactful moment in a fight when a point gets taken. So referees are very, very hesitant to do it. I get where you're coming from. It's a foul. It's a foul, right? That was
Twice,
clearly
twice
two
we're
fouls.
talking,
Then
not
it should be a
once,
point
twice.
taken. But referees are they don't want to be the ones to dictate. They don't want to be the ones who change the outcome of the fight. And sometimes in one of those
The
close fights, a
foul.
10-8 makes all the difference. I'm not saying I agree or
That's
disagree
like an
with that
NFL referee
mentality.
saying, I don't want to call a pass interference at the goal line
A
because I
little
don't want to
different.
dictate. Why
A
is
little
it
different.
different?
Because the referee in the NFL, the referee is not giving a team or taking away an actual point from a team. This would be
I mean,
that in
putting them
MMA.
at the
They're actually
goal
taking
line.
a point away from the final score. That's what it is. That's what it is. Again, I'm not saying I agree with that, but the referees are very, very reluctant to do that for that reason because it makes an awful lot of difference. And sometimes, if you recover from a low blow, you get the 5 minutes and you're back and you're fresh and you're fine. Sometimes it even helps you because you get to rest for a little bit. Not saying I want to be hit low in any time of the
No,
of the,
it's
of the next week,
horrible.
but
It's
that's the
horrific.
mentality, and I get it. I do get it. Do you get that though, right? I mean, you understand
No, I
the
don't get it. You
stuff.
know why? Because I bet there's someone watching this right now who's like, oh, 30 to 27, 29, 28, 29, 28. What's the point? What are these guys talking about? Well, guess what? Guess what? The warning should be in the locker room. That's the warning. The first foul, I don't care if it was intentional, unintentional. You hit the guy below the belt, you poked him in the eye, you take a point away. Guess what? You do it again, you take another point away. Why? Because it wasn't you who decided this. Them's the rules. You grab a face mask, you get 15 yards. You swat a ball that's going in the hoop, it's a goaltend. These are the rules. You don't get like mulligans, especially not in fighting where you're getting hit actually below the belt. It changes the trajectory of the entire fight.
It could.
Hogwash. I can't believe he got away with two. I mean, it's a non-consequential thing. I mean, what like who's talking about this fight now? But that stuff drives me nuts.
Look, I share your pain, but I also understand the other side where referees don't want to
Yeah,
dictate
you
the
share my
score, the
pain.
actual
What
score
about
of the
Phil
fight.
Rowe's pain? All right.
I don't want to share that pain either, Ariel. I don't want to share that pain either, but I do understand the plight of the referee in this case, and it's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah.
There's a judge. How much does that foul impact the fight? And I think if a referee sees that it's a very impactful foul, they could take the point away. And we've seen it, with like
Yeah.
a Jason Herzog, who one of the best referees, in the world right now. Will he'll take that point, which he did recently. But yeah, I mean that's just the way it goes. They don't want to affect the outcome of the fight.
All right. We're out of time. Marc, pleasure as always.
Yeah,
Go put that
poke you
heart.
poke you in the eye over there.
Yeah. Well, I would wear that hard hat next time. Bend down, poke. I don't know what I'm saying. Great
That's okay.
stuff. Appreciate the time. Congratulations, Kamaru Usman. He did it again. 13 in a row. Wow, what an accomplishment. Fantastic suit afterwards. He's all fired up. Looking forward to what's next for him. We, though, have to go to bed. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.